Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you the top 10 best OG travel tames. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. In at number 10, I've decided to put the Ichthyosaurus, as I find this is a really valuable travel tame. It is so versatile in how it went around the space in 2015 Arc times, and it really was innovative in the way that it added the passive taming ability, which is one which we all very much know and love to this day, and it was the one to innovate it. I'm confident it was the first one, and it was a really fast underwater tame. All of your underwater traveling needs of the OG era of Arc were kept fully under control. There was no issues with traveling these things around anywhere. They could get from A to B insanely quickly, very easy to tame as well, and you know, they would spawn in some quite nice areas as well, so definitely a OG travel tame. Next up, we have got the Rex, and undoubtedly it was still a good travel mount for me. When I was going on quite a long journey, I would actually bring the Rex along with me. It might sound a little bit stupid to you, but this really did just assist me in that sense of traveling, as I felt I had a lot of support to go with me, and that nothing really could face me when I was on a Rex. And that does apply to, I think, one other creature later on in this list as well. Just, you know, the Rex could get from A to B reasonably quickly. It wasn't the fastest, but its stamina didn't feel awful at all when it came out. I don't know why it feels actually quite bad now, and it felt like, yeah, that's a reasonable speed for this creature to go at. And it was just the way that it would go, and then it did the thing, and it did what I needed it to do, and it attacked anything that I needed it to attack, and I survived all of my journeys going on with a Rex. I wouldn't take it underwater, obviously. I didn't. They're really bad swimmers, but anywhere else, it's definitely fine. Next up, I've decided to put the bionics, as although this was a bit of a later one, so it doesn't quite fit into the OG as much as some of the others on the list because it wasn't a release tame, I find it is still very deserving, as its caving travel was something which was great, really. The ability to traverse through caves, but also it could travel through mountains, through water, and through all of that as well. It was a great all-rounder. You don't really say traveling through caves in Arc, but it did add to the element of travel. You could travel to the caves really easily and then just go in them and traverse all of them really easy, so you could say traversal tame in that sense. But you know, still it sticks to the travel taming niche. It is a very useful creature, very easy to tame as well. It could jump around and it had a lot of speed on it, and still is a very great carnivore to have in your roster if you haven't actually tamed one already. Definitely worth it. I feel like this creature sort of gets discounted when it comes to the OG traveling tames, and I know it's kind of a little bit far-fetched further because you have to wait for the Snowbound to be released, but that's the same time frame as when the bionics was out, because I'm pretty sure it's roughly when the swamps and redwoods and stuff came out. And the megaloceros was just really that creature where you could get around with a lot of speed on this thing. I know I've got the female one here because it was kind of meant for a worst Arc tames video, but still the male one would be the one that we usually tend to just look so much more impressive actually generally as well because of those horns. But you really could get a lot of speed on them, and that made them very effective and useful mounts that I would use all over the place all the time, and they would just get me everywhere really quickly. Yes, they didn't do a heck of a lot of damage, but they could jump around and they could do all of that, and they could get you from A to B quickly, and they were easy to tame, so even if they did die, they were quite easily replaceable. The Spino is sort of the upgrade to the Rex for me when it comes to a traveling mount. It really does have everything going for it in terms of that. Compared to the Rex, it is faster mobility. It obviously can travel underwater, which the Rex really is terrible at, and on top of that, it is just generally a more mobile creature. The only real difficulty is they're a bit rarer to find around the place, and you know, you might have some difficulty taming because they're a lot more mobile. It's less easy to trap, you could say, but I really find that that's not too much of an issue when you're dealing with a creature like this. It is totally fine, and you'll have no real issues whatsoever. They are great tamers. tames, and you can do a heck of a lot with them, and you will definitely enjoy having one as a travel mount, and I definitely did back then, and it really was something which I could highly respect at the time, and I still highly respect to this day. Really, really great tames for traveling. In number 5, we've got the thler, and I found this really did make a huge difference, but I'm having to knock it back a bit from the OG scale because of it being later on, but it really did sort of change the traveling game for a huge amount, and it really is a great traveling mount still to this day, and I love it for all of its versatile traveling abilities. It has a lot of speed, it can get around with relative ease, and you'll really find no issue with getting anywhere with this thing apart from underwater areas, which is the only place where it really lacks. They could also deal quite a lot of damage too, so the protection was definitely there when it came to these creatures. You definitely wouldn't feel like you couldn't be protected under these circumstances with a creature like this. They did everything that you needed for them, and it sort of made the Rex a little bit obsolete for that traveling need, as they were faster and they still did tons of damage for me. Next up, I've decided to put the Raptor, as I find this is just generally a really useful tame in my opinion. I feel like it does everything that you really need it to do when it comes to travel. It has been around since the game has been released, so it definitely falls into the OG stages, and it could pack a lot of speed, a lot of punch, and generally just did very well in terms of traveling. And again, they were quite easily replaceable, like the megaloceros, which really did aid them, and on top of that, they could do quite a hefty amount of damage too. They really did actually excel in the damage to size ratio, like you could have Carnos and things like that, and they're actually a quite nice honorable mention, so I'll give them one there. But the Raptor just seems to get a lot more oomph when it came to the traveling of creatures and just generally yourself as well. It was a high tier traveling creature to say the least, and that is definitely why it is deserving of this spot on the list. In number 3, I've decided to put the Quetzal, as although this was a little bit of a later addition in 2015, it has come before the baryonyx, the thler, and the megaloceros, and it was just such a game changer to the traveling just spectrum on a whole. And obviously you could level up that speed too, you could build a base on the back of these things, and they really did an awful lot when it came to traveling around the place. They obviously weren't the fastest when you first got them, but the fact that they had tons of stamina and weight meant you could carry metal all across the map with these things, and tons of it too, without the risk of being encumbered, which actually the next creature on the list has a little bit of an issue with. But still, I would consider it a better OG Arc travel mount, as it's still very useful to this day and a very respected flyer. But this obviously still is as well, just maybe not quite to the same degree, but it really did hit hard, make a difference, so it deserves to be in the number 3 spot. So as I was saying, in number 2 we've got the Pteranodon. This is the creature that I was alluding to. It is probably the first flyer that you'll tame in Arc, and definitely for all the OGs out there, it was your first flyer that you tame. Well, actually in the number 1 spot is a different flyer, which is definitely a lot more preferable and in my opinion better, but we'll get onto that when we get onto it. But this creature was an incredibly fast, agile flyer that was relatively easy to tame. There wasn't a lot of real difficulty. The fact that you could use a bowler really did aid in the taming of this thing, as traps weren't really widely used when the game first released. There wasn't all of that infrastructure built in. It was simply, you know, you do just bowler the thing and do that, or if it wasn't able to be bowlered, then you would just run after it and keep tranking it, or like stand on top of a cliff or something like that. They were the strategies used, not really traps. But yes, relatively easy to tame, apart from the saddle was a bit of a pain to craft, but it really is deserving of the spot. And in number 1, we've got the RG, and I just find this is the best OG travel mount for just a few reasons. It has a lot more weight than a Pteranodon. It has in some ways a lot more, actually it has a lot more stamina than a Pteranodon, and if you leveled it, you could still get it to the same amount of speed as a Pteranodon and really have a lot of agility on this thing. Not to mention that they could pick up more creatures as well, and I'm not sure if they had this at the time, but their saddle obviously now acts as a portable smithy, but again, not too sure if they had that at the time, but they still had all of those other features. Also, not sure if they had weight reduction at the time, but they were definitely far better for getting metal, crystal, obsidian, those kind of things. Because metal, especially, actually, really, really important game resource, and the fact that you could get it so easily and efficiently with this thing and travel it back to your base. With the Pteranodon, that was an absolute pain and you could barely gather any of it. You might as well just bring a land mount, whereas this thing, it still definitely worked effectively. But anyway, that is it in today's video. I really hope that you all have enjoyed this one, as I've definitely enjoyed making it. Comment down below, what is your favourite Ark OG travel mount? And if you didn't agree with this list, then put the 10 OG travel mounts in the comments below. I'll see you all later.